almost 2 a.m. and the city was asleep. Most of the streets were empty, except for the occasional street light flickering above me. I had been driving for a rideshare company for a few years, mostly night shifts, because the streets were quieter and tips were better. But nights like this were why I always kept my dashboard camera plugged in. I checked my rearview mirror, noticing the way my own tired eyes reflected in the glass. Every shadow looked like it could be something else. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I approached the next street. The hum of the engine was comforting, a reminder that the car itself was reliable, even if the night wasn't. Then came the ping, a ride request. It was from a convenience store 2 blocks away. At first glance it seemed normal, harmless even. But I had that feeling, a knot in my stomach, subtle, almost dismissible but impossible to ignore. You know the feeling, something's off but you can't put your finger on it. I hesitated at the intersection, debating whether to accept. My thumb hovered over the screen. Cancel, accept, cancel, accept. The GPS told me the store was right up ahead. As I turned the corner, my headlights fell on the building, and the reason for my unease became clear. The store was completely dark, shuttered tight, and the parking lot was empty. Not a single car. Not a single flicker of life. And then I saw him. He was pacing outside, wearing a tattered hoodie that looked like it hadn't been washed in years. A hole ran down one sleeve, exposing his arm in the dim light. His movements were jerky, almost unnatural. He glanced over his shoulder constantly as if someone, or something, was following him. My pulse quickened. Maybe I should just cancel, I muttered under my breath, my voice barely above the hum of the engine. But for reasons I couldn't explain, I didn't. I unlocked the doors. He slid in silently, no greeting, no acknowledgement. Just there. The interior of my car felt suddenly smaller, suffocating. I gripped the wheel a little tighter, noticing every detail. The way his hoodie hung loosely, the shadows on his face, the slight tremor in his hands. He stared at me through the rearview mirror, unblinking. I tried not to meet his gaze, but inevitably, my eyes darted to his. Something about him wasn't just strange, it was threatening. I turned on the radio, hoping a bit of music would break the tension. Static. Then a soft pop of a local station. I adjusted the dial, but before a single lyric could play, he snapped. Turn it off. His voice was low, raspy, and carried a weight I couldn't place. Cigarette smoker, maybe, or something else. I did as he said, gripping the steering wheel harder. Silence fell, thick and heavy. Then, out of nowhere, he asked, "Have you ever picked up someone you shouldn't have?" I forced a laugh. "Well, I hope not." No response. Just a smile. A slow, unsettling smile that didn't reach his eyes. He began speaking, almost rambling. He talked about rideshare jobs he'd had, people stealing from him, cars breaking down in the middle of nowhere. Words slurred together, fragments of stories that didn't make sense. And all the while he never looked away, never blinked, never let go of that intense stare. I kept checking the GPS, focusing on the route, trying to ignore the growing sense of dread. My heartbeat was deafening in my ears, echoing with every turn we took. Each shadow outside the car seemed alive. Trees leaned unnaturally, street signs appeared closer than they should, and every sound, the distant howl of a dog, the clatter of trash cans, set my nerves on edge. Minutes dragged like hours. He muttered something about trust, about how much people put in someone sitting right behind them. My stomach churned. This wasn't just a strange passenger. This was someone who understood fear, maybe even enjoyed it. Every corner I turned, every street light we passed felt like a trap. My eyes flicked constantly to the rearview mirror, to the empty back seat except for him, and to the side streets where shadows could be hiding things. My mind replayed every news story I'd ever read about late-night attacks, abductions, and robberies. What if he's planning something? What if he's already done something? A sudden thought hit me, the store. It was closed. Why was he even here? My hand twitched over the cancel button again, but I didn't press it. We were already in motion. There was no turning back. He continued his monologue, fragments of past crimes, vague confessions, muttered threats. I tried to focus on the road to keep my breathing steady, but my body felt like it had its own pulse, independent of my mind. Every sound from the car, the hum of the engine, the soft rustle of his hoodie, even the creak of the seatbelt, felt amplified, intentional, menacing. And then he said it. "You're lucky. Most people aren't." My hands tightened on the wheel. My knuckles whitened. I realized I was inches away from a scenario I couldn't control. I couldn't predict what he might do, and the fear, it was visceral, choking. By now, every minor bump, every flicker of a streetlight, every echo of a distant car horn, felt like a countdown to something terrible. My grip on reality was thinning. I kept driving, hoping, praying, counting every block. And then, faintly in the distance, headlights. A police car. Relief washed over me, but it was thin and fleeting. He slouched down, eyes closed, pretending he wasn't there. My pulse didn't slow. My stomach still twisted. When the car passed, he whispered again, almost inaudibly, "You got lucky." And then he was gone. It was past midnight, and the city was asleep. Empty streets stretched ahead, the hum of the engine and the glow of the headlights my only companions. I had been taking night shifts for years. The roads were quieter, the tips better, but nights always carried a strange weight. A ride request popped up from a nearby convenience store. The distance was short, but the street was dark, the flickering streetlights casting odd shadows. I slowed down. That gut feeling I always hated surged again. Something wasn't right. But I didn't cancel. I unlocked the doors and he slid in silently. His eyes locked on mine in the rearview mirror. Cold, unblinking, calculating. I tried to break the silence. "Where to?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. He muttered to himself, barely audible, "You don't see what's coming?" I swallowed hard. My pulse raced. See what? What's coming? I turned on the radio, hoping some music would ease the tension. Instantly he snapped, "Turn it off." His low, raspy voice carried a weight that made my hands tighten on the wheel. I obeyed. For a few minutes, nothing but the hum of the engine, the soft rustle of his coat, and the distant drip of water. Then he spoke again. "Do you know what it feels like to be invisible? Unseen, until it's too late." I nodded slowly, unsure what to say. My mind raced. Is he unstable? Dangerous? He rambled in fragments, stories about people, places, things he had done. Some made sense, some didn't. His words, pauses, and deliberate tone unsettled me deeply. I focused on the GPS, but every shadow outside seemed alive, every faint sound amplified. Suddenly he leaned forward. "Do you trust people? You know how fragile that trust is." I nodded, hands tight on the wheel. His slow smile didn't reach his eyes. Not friendly. Not human. The city felt emptier with each passing minute. Streetlights flickered, the distant hum of life faded. I noticed tiny, disturbing details. The way his coat hung, the faint smell of smoke, the subtle twitch of his hands. A pedestrian on a side street paused and stared at our car. He muttered something under his breath, low but threatening. My heart thudded. Why is he watching him? Why is he so aware? We drove along a deserted road lined with trees. Fog curled around the headlights like grasping fingers. He began humming, low and eerie. Every sound, engine, shifting weight, the creak of his seat, felt magnified. He leaned forward again. "You think you're safe? Luck only lasts so long." My pulse spiked. Every nerve screamed. I focused on the road, landmarks, anything real. But my instincts told me I was trapped in a situation I couldn't control. A stray cat darted across the road. He chuckled softly. Even the smallest things can be omens. Minutes dragged into eternity. Then from a side street, a shadow moved. A figure? I glanced in the mirror. He smiled. "See? They're everywhere." The rest of the ride passed in a blur of heightened senses and dread. When he finally exited the car, he vanished into the night without a word. I sat frozen, heart pounding. The streets were empty, the night silent, but the feeling lingered. Something had followed me, something I couldn't see. The next few nights after that ride, I couldn't sleep. Every time my phone rang, my pulse spiked. Every shadow, every sound outside my apartment felt threatening. I tried to shake it off as paranoia, but deep down I knew something was off. Then it happened. I picked up another night shift, driving through the quiet streets I knew so well. The streets were darker than usual, fog thicker, the city muffled like it was holding its breath. And then I saw him. That same silhouette, walking at the edge of the street, almost blending into the shadows. My stomach dropped. I slowed down, heart hammering. He didn't notice me at first, then glanced up with that same cold, piercing stare. My hands trembled as I unlocked the doors. He didn't speak, just slid in. The interior felt smaller, heavier. His presence was suffocating. I turned on the radio for comfort, but he hissed, "Turn it off." My hands gripped the wheel so tightly I could feel my knuckles crack. This time he didn't ramble. He spoke directly. "Do you feel it? That someone's always watching? Always 2 steps ahead. You're alone, but not really." I swallowed hard, trying to focus on the road. Every sound outside, the rustle of leaves, distant footsteps, the faint scraping of tires, felt magnified. My heart raced, every nerve screaming. Then the unexpected happened, a loud bang on the car roof. I jumped, slamming on the brakes. The fog made everything look distorted. My passenger's eyes glimmered in the dim light, an unnerving, triumphant smile crossing his face. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My mind was racing. Is he trying to scare me? Or is this real? The car seemed to close in around me. Every shadow became a threat. The streets twisted unnaturally. He whispered, "You think you're in control, but you're not." Then I noticed movement in the rearview mirror, a figure outside the car, following us silently. I blinked, trying to make sense of it. The figure was gone when I looked directly, but the feeling didn't leave. My chest tightened. Minutes felt like hours. I forced myself to drive, avoiding the side streets, keeping my eyes on the GPS. He continued to speak in riddles. "You see them even when you don't. They're close, closer than you think. Luck only lasts so long." A sudden scream echoed from a nearby alley. I flinched. He smiled. "Did you hear that? They're here. Watching. Waiting." I was shaking, hands trembling, barely holding onto the wheel. My pulse raced like a drumbeat of fear. Every nerve screamed to stop, to escape, but the street seemed endless, twisting like a maze. Finally, we reached his stop. He slid out silently, leaving me staring after him, paralyzed. My heart still raced. I sat for several minutes, hands gripping the wheel, processing the night. Every instinct screamed that I had just survived something beyond understanding. When I finally drove away, the streets seemed emptier, quieter than before. But the feeling lingered. I was no longer alone in the city. Something, or someone, had marked me. And I knew deep down it wasn't over. The nights after that ride were unbearable. Every sound, every shadow, every unknown number that flashed across my phone made my heart jump. Even the familiar streets felt alien, as if the city itself had changed, becoming a labyrinth where danger lurked in corners I once considered safe. I reviewed my dashcam footage obsessively. That's when I saw them. Faint shapes, almost invisible at first. Reflections in windows, shadows that moved independently of anything around. I realized I hadn't imagined it. He, or someone like him, was out there tracking me. Every detail now made sense. Every gut feeling I had ignored before was a warning. I reported the incidents to the authorities. Most dismissed me as paranoid, but some took note, brief, cautious glances that said they weren't entirely convinced either. The truth was clear. Official help wasn't coming. I had to rely on my own instincts, my own vigilance. I changed my routine entirely. Late night shifts were avoided. My routes became unpredictable. Doors double-locked, windows checked obsessively. Phone always within reach, lights always on. But no matter what precautions I took, the fear didn't leave. It was a constant shadow at the edge of my perception. One rainy night, I sat in my car after a late shift, hands still trembling. The streets were nearly empty. And then, the unmistakable tapping on my window. Slow, deliberate. I froze. My pulse spiked. Slowly, I turned, peering into the rain-soaked darkness. Nothing. But the instinctual dread remained. Someone had been there. Watching. Waiting. I thought back to that first ride, the way he had entered my car silently, the cold stare, the unnerving smile. Every little detail replayed in my mind. The rhythm of his breathing, the subtle twitch of his hands, the way his words lingered long after he left. Each memory was a warning I had ignored. Sleep became impossible. Every knock, every phone call, every unusual sound in the building set my nerves on fire. My apartment no longer felt like a sanctuary, it felt like a cage. My own shadow startled me. Friends noticed my agitation, but no one could understand the persistent dread that had rooted itself inside me. Then, months later, a breakthrough, or a deeper terror. I saw him again. Not in person, but a glimpse through the corner of my eye as I drove home. A fleeting shadow, a reflection in the shop window. It was enough. Enough to send my heart racing and my hands gripping the wheel like I was holding onto my life itself. I realized something crucial. Fear isn't just an emotion. It's a signal, a guide. That night, every instinct I had ignored could have cost me dearly. Surviving wasn't luck. It was awareness, caution, and action. I started sharing the story, recounting each moment in detail, trying to warn others, hoping they would listen where I had ignored the signs. Even now, years later, I drive cautiously, always scanning the streets, checking the rearview mirror repeatedly. Every strange sound, every unexpected movement, every unknown call sets me on edge. The city seems quiet, safe, but only on the surface. Beneath it, shadows move. Observers wait. Danger never truly disappears. It just hides, waiting for the moment you let your guard down. I share this story not to frighten unnecessarily, but to highlight something essential. The world is bigger than we think. Stranger encounters, fleeting shadows, tiny details. They matter. They are warnings, not coincidences. And sometimes, the most ordinary nights can become the most unforgettable, leaving marks on your memory and your nerves that never fade. So next time you're alone, driving late, or answering a call from a stranger, remember, trust your instincts. Notice the details. Sometimes, survival is about paying attention to what others overlook, and understanding that some encounters leave a mark you can't erase. Even now, when my phone rings late at night or a shadow crosses my path, I remember. I remember the nights I thought I was alone, only to realize I was being watched. And I know that some stories never truly end. They only wait in silence, ready to resurface.